If people pleasing is the behavior, then weak and potentially non existent boundaries are often the reason.
Think about the confusion that a people pleaser experiences, having this kind of back and forth. I don't want to, but I feel I must. I don't like to, but I feel I have to. There's this terrible competition going on inside.
But you have to have enough like and respect for you to be able to do it and to hold yourself accountable and to hold others accountable to the boundaries that you need to set. Welcome back to Unapologetic Rabble-Rousers. I'm DocShellie.
And I'm Carla Lewis. And here we go. Third episode in this whole series. And it's been very enlightening. And what we're going to focus on today is the link between people pleasing and boundaries. So we've talked a little bit about both of those. Well, we've talked more than a little bit about boundaries. And we've just started this talking about people pleasing. But bringing these two together, there's some real chemistry. There are actual reactions that kick off bringing these topics together. So that's how we're going to take on episode 3 of this series.
Yeah. If people pleasing is the behavior, then weak and potentially non existent boundaries are often the reason.
Take that in, folks.
So boundaries is the topic here that we're going to dive into a little bit, and how boundaries impact our lives. And of course, we'll share some actionable ways that you can start to create stronger boundaries. So think about, as we dive in here, like really think about an area of your life where you maybe struggle to set some boundaries. And think about that as you listen to the rest of this episode here.
So one of the first questions is going to be, if boundaries are the issue, then why in particular do people pleasers struggle with setting those? Or maybe they're set, but they get violated. Like permission is granted to violate the boundary, either you violating your own or allowing others to cross it. What makes it hard for people pleasers?
I think people who are inherent people pleasers, I think, are just okay with sacrificing their own needs. So if they have a boundary, maybe they're not recognizing that they're violating it, or maybe they don't even recognize that they don't have a boundary there. But when you think about weak boundaries or non-existent boundaries, like there's some key signs, right? So if you're saying yes when you really mean no, people will ask sometimes, hey, do you want to go out to dinner? No, I really don't, but I'm going to say yes to keep the peace. You feel responsible for other people's happiness. It is not your responsibility. But people pleasers will dive in, make that person happy.
Michelle, could we spend just a couple of moments here going back to the basics about boundaries? Now, I'm also going to plug, you didn't ask me to, but I'm going to do it again, that your book, Boundaries That Empower, is just a phenomenal resource and provides some very provocative ways to examine what it is you've set up that is the framework for how you engage with the world and even with yourself. So could we just go back and reestablish just that basic foundational understanding of boundaries in the way that we're talking about them?
Yeah, boundaries are something that we all need in our lives to help preserve our sanity, to help manage relationships, to help protect ourselves. And boundaries get in the way of people pleasing. Because if I have a boundary that says, don't call me before 10 o'clock on a Saturday or Sunday morning, people didn't like that when I first established that boundary, but I was really tired of waking up to my phone ringing on the weekend. I am a night owl. I will stay up till 4 or 5 o'clock in the morning on the weekends. So me getting up at 10 o'clock is 5 or 6 hours of sleep. And people are like, oh, you like to sleep in. No, I just like to sleep. I'm not sleeping in. I'm not getting 14 hours of sleep. So when you start to establish boundaries, sometimes people don't like it. My father is an early riser, and he would often call me at 8 o'clock in the morning on Saturday. Well, I've slept 3 hours. I don't want to be woken up at 8 o'clock in the morning with, "Hi, is it okay if I come over to start the cars? Is it okay if I come over to work on the car?" No, it's not. I'm sleeping. So I put in this rule of don't call me before 10. Now, he didn't abide by it the very first time. So I had to keep reminding him. Remember, you can't call me before 10. God bless him. He will now call me at 10:01.
But it's about establishing the ground rules of engagement. Really.
That is a perfect way of putting it. Ground rules of engagement. Yes. Yes.
As we're talking about that now, as relates to people pleasing, think about the confusion that a people pleaser experiences having this kind of back and forth. I was going to say tennis match, but I'll call pickleball match to honor your newest
My
sport.
newfound love.
Yes, yes. But there's this going back and forth. I don't want to, but I feel I must. I don't like to, but I feel I have to. There's this terrible competition going on inside. And what I'm picking up is people pleasers, they're going to lay down their racket and just roll over and say, yeah, okay, I'm going to do even what I don't want to do because I'd rather do that. I'd rather violate my boundary than risk somebody not liking me, not being happy with me, not agreeing with the approach I'm taking here.
Yeah. Yeah. People pleasers in particular, it's that fear of rejection, and it's, I don't want to be seen as difficult. I don't want to be seen as challenging. So that need to be liked can very much drive violating your own boundaries. And if you've not set boundaries before, it can feel scary and it can feel really foreign to you. If you've not done it and you've not been great at holding yourself and others accountable to your boundaries. It's scary when you start to do that because people might not like it. People might not respect it. But you have to have enough like and respect for you to be able to do it and to hold yourself accountable and to hold others accountable to the boundaries that you need to set.
I think being able to reflect on it in terms of how you're establishing new boundaries or shifting ones that were in place either by default or design is that you are not the only one who is impacted by these decisions to enact a new boundary. So being able to understand what it is that's pressing you to say, you know what, I've got to change this. This has got to change. And as we're talking about people pleasing and saying yes when you want to say no, or going when you don't want to, whatever it is, there's something about it that you need to grapple with. And you have this habit. We'll go with the saying yes when you want to say no. You have this habit of doing it. So what's behind that? What is it that would be so wonderful for you to understand about why you would want to be able to say no when no is what you really want to say? How would it feel? What does that look like? Imagine yourself being able to say, pick the top two situations where this is the trigger and I'm going to say yes. I don't want to say yes. Think about what those situations are and then do a little thought work, do a little mindset stuff that's going to help you understand, well, okay, why is my default to take better care of them than I do myself?
And I think it's really important to recognize that every yes to someone else is a no to yourself.
Think about that.
That should not feel good to you. And I think there's some things, it was some signs that you need to set some boundaries are if you're feeling resentful, you're asking yourself, why do these people always ask me for this? Or why doesn't anyone appreciate all the things I do for them? Those are clear signs that boundaries are missing. Very clear signs. A couple other things you can think about besides the saying yes when you really mean no. You're feeling responsible for other people's happiness. You feel guilty when you say no or you prioritize your own needs. That should not cause guilt when you prioritize your needs over others. The other thing that's tends to be a pretty common sign is you're overcommitted or you're burnt out, just exhausted. Those are really easy, clear signs to recognize that it's time to set some boundaries.
As you reflect on that, then it's a matter of, okay, all right, fine, DocShellie, you got me thinking about it. Now I need to set some boundaries. I need to set a boundary. I need to know what I want that boundary to be. And the first thing you need to look at is the actions that you are going to allow yourself, the thoughts you're going to allow yourself to either start or stop.
Mm-hmm.
Before anything can influence the outside world, you need to be able to reflect on those things that you need to start and stop. For you, with you, by you.
Mm-hmm.
Because any boundary you set that doesn't have that fully in place is dust in the wind.
And now I want to sing Dust
Yeah.
in the Wind. No, you're absolutely right, though. And I think the very first thing that we have to do is to recognize that boundaries are not selfish. Hear me. Boundaries are not selfish. They are an act of self-respect. If you don't respect yourself, it's going to be really hard to set some boundaries. But that's where you got to start, and start small. Like, you're not going to transform your boundary life overnight. It takes a long time. But really think about, where is it in your life that you're saying yes when you want to say no, where you feel responsible for other people's emotional health, where you feel just exhausted all the time, or you feel overcommitted, you're burning yourself out.
Pick one of those.
Pick one, and pick a small one. Don't make it the biggest one you have. Pick a small one and just practice saying no. We did a whole episode on the power of no, and no can be a complete sentence. When you're first starting out, I know you're going to want to explain yourself. I can't do that right now because blah, 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 blah. Just say no. Just say no. It's a complete sentence. You could add, that doesn't work for me. That's cool. But just you don't have to over communicate when you start to practice no.
I need to add that when you're dealing with this reflection and this feeling the need to over explain and all that, if you have trained people around you, that is exactly how you handle things. When you muster up the courage to say no, and they're going to push. Why? Why not? And the fact is that no should be enough, but you've trained them. You've trained them that it isn't, and that you will do everything you can to explain why, and they will then be able to find those hooks that they can set, so they'll pull you into what it is they want and away from what it is that you want, which is to say no.
Yes, and recognize, to your point, the people that are pushing back or they're guilt tripping you, those are the people who benefited from your lack of boundaries. It served them well that you had no boundaries set up. So of course they're going to guilt trip you. Of course they're going to push your boundaries. You full on expect that to happen. Say no anyway.
And one of the things we've talked about, Shelley, has been practicing. So if you can, and whether it's in work or in your personal life, the fact is that if you have thought through what it is The what, so what, now what? I want to set this boundary. I don't want to keep saying yes to this person or this event or whatever it is. This is why, and this is how I'm going to handle it. I'm going to practice that.
Mm-hmm.
Then when the situation arises, instead of reacting, you're going to be able to respond from a place
Yes.
of informed consent on your
Yes.
part. You have given yourself permission to say no. You've practiced it in your head. You know where it sits in your body. You know where the strength for that sits.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, think about it. Think it through. Practice it.
Yeah, absolutely. It's funny. I was having a conversation with a friend of mine the other day and telling her about a situation where another, I'll call them an acquaintance, was really just pushing me on something. And I said, look, I'm going to end this conversation if you don't stop. I'm not going to keep doing this. You're not going to treat me like that, or you're not going to talk to me like that. And the person was like, no, you don't understand. I do understand. And what I'm telling you is you're being incredibly disrespectful to me, and I'm not going to stand for that. So we can end this conversation now, or you can stop and we can continue talking about something else. And they just kept pushing. And I said, I'm done. I'm going to end this call. You're not going to talk that way to me. So I was telling my friend about that. She's like, I love how you have a boundary where you will not be disrespected and you just call people out on it. I would sit there and be like, I don't know what to say. I don't know what to do. Like, and I'm like, there's certain things I absolutely will not stand for. Being disrespected for no reason is one of them. And this person was just being really rude and really disrespectful. And I was like, I'm not going to deal with it. That person called me a couple days later and apologized. I don't think this person has ever apologized to me for anything, and apologized for being rude and disrespectful and violating my boundary, and appreciated the fact that I called him out on it. So when you are able to hold yourself accountable first, and then hold others accountable secondly, they might not like it initially. But I love the fact that this person called me a couple days later to say, hey, I respect the fact that you did that. It's really powerful when you can hold yourself accountable to boundaries that you have set. It gives you more energy and time for what matters to you. You get improved relationships and more respect. And the best gift of all is greater self-confidence and peace of mind when you get really good at setting boundaries. It can be life-changing. I will step off my soapbox now.
No, these messages cannot be repeated too often. And I think under the umbrella of the conversation we're having over these episodes about this whole notion of people pleasing and wearing masks and honoring or not even having boundaries, that you think about it from a people pleaser point of view, how much strife would you remove from your life if you were firm on the boundaries that you will set and honor, and expect that the people around you who matter will as well honor them. It starts with you.
Yeah.
It starts with you.
100%. As you think about setting boundaries, give yourself grace, because you're going to make some mistakes along the way. And you really just recognize, I love what you just said, Carla, the people who matter will respect the boundaries. It might take them a minute, but they'll get there.
They have to be retrained.
Yes, exactly. They absolutely have to be retrained, and recognize that you trained them to be that way. You train them to have those expectations of you. And I think that's really important, to give grace for yourself and for others. Like the example with my dad, I would get, it's 8 o'clock in the morning. Why are you calling me? Well, because I've always been like, hi, what do you need? And it took a little bit of time before
Mhm.
those 8 o'clock calls. Then it was 9 o'clock. I'm like, it's still not 10 o'clock. And if he called me at 9:58, I'd be like, it is not 10 o'clock yet, would be the first thing I would say if I answered the phone. But recognize that you can have a little bit of fun with the boundaries. It's okay. And it doesn't need to be a long, drawn out conversation when you set new boundaries. It can be a really simple conversation. But putting yourself and your needs first is just incredibly powerful, and it's respectful for you. It's respectful for the people you interact with. And I just can't say enough about how important it is to have boundaries in your life. So I guess I would encourage our listeners to really think about, where are those areas in your life where a little boundary would make a big difference. Start small. And of course, we always invite you to share your experiences with us.
I'm Carla Lewis.
I'm DocShellie. We'll see you for our next episode. It's really important to recognize that every yes to someone else is a no to yourself. Really think about, where are those areas in your life where a little boundary would make a big difference. Start small.